So for general, it's basically just what your PC is, or sorry, what your monitor is, whether you have a 240 hertz, 160 hertz, or 140 hertz. Just set it to whatever your display is, and it'll automatically recognize your max frame rate. VSync, all that, just turn it off. Anti-aliasing, make sure that's off. Motion blur, just make sure that's off. Everything off here. And then as for graphics, I have everything just set to the absolute lowest. Just make sure you set it to the lowest possible. The only thing I do have on is FX. That's so you can see Ultimate's better. Specifically Temlaunch. Temlaunch is almost impossible to see when you set it to lowest graphics. So that's why I have effects on medium. But aside from that, everything's absolute lowest. I know some players like to do post-processing on sometimes medium or highest. That just means the map loads in faster. But for me, it didn't really impact me a crazy amount, so I just turned it to lowest. So you can turn that setting on if you do want post-processing on medium or high, but I just have effects on medium and everything else the absolute lowest. So this will help a ton on FPS. But if you want even more FPS than that, you can turn on the setting here, DLSS. You'll get a little more FPS. I personally don't like it because I just don't like the way it looks. So I have mine on off. But you can turn this on, just change it to super performance to get slightly more FPS. And if you want to try to get even more than that, you can turn down render scale. But I wouldn't go below 80 because it makes your game look like very pixelated. So anything below 80, the game looks too bad. But if you can, then just keep it at 100. That way you can see stuff more clearly. Then as for audio settings, I mean, audio can be preference. I have mine set to 35, so when I hear incoming players, it's at 35 volume. Background game music is set to 1, but it's just basically at 0. This you don't need at all, it's just going to distract you in fights, so just turn that down to 0. I just have mine set to 1 so I can kind of hear it vaguely, but that's that. And then SFX, I have mine set to 65, and then things like scenes here. So this is like the trees, the wind, I have mine set to 15, because I do like to hear a little bit of it in the background, so that's why. As for character, so this is like movement, attacks, and skills. I have this pretty high to 70, so I can hear footsteps more. But if this is too high for you guys, just set it down to like 50, or even 45, because you do still want to be able to hear footsteps and people on the map. And as for combat, this is just collision. I have mine set to 40. Some people even turn this down to 20, but I don't mind mine being at 40. Bane Breath, that's like the huge purple thing that comes from the sky and kills you. So this is a super loud sound if you turn it past 50. So that's why mine's super low. Then after this is just hero speech, character speech. You just turn this to whatever if you want to hear your character or not. Open mic is off, and as for hero voice, you can choose between Chinese, Japanese, or English. I've been personally using Japanese at the moment. And fun fact, if you guys didn't know, the one who voices Justina in Japanese, she also voices Mikasa from Attack on Titan, so that's pretty cool. And she also voices 2B from Nier Automata, so it really fits my channel a lot. And then as for mouse and keyboard, I do play default controls. Everything's default. View sensitivity is 1414. My DPI on my mouse is 1600. So everything's default. The only thing I did change is quick parry to my mouse bind. And that's it. Controller, I can't really give much advice on controller. Just make sure your aim assist is on. Don't turn that off. And as for gameplay, everything here is set to default. I didn't change this at all. If you do mess with these settings though, just make sure that you don't mess with these things here, like jumping, tree climbing, beam jumps, you want it to be tap. If you have it set to hold, then it's going to be really hard to get away from during fights or just anything in general. If you have to hold down the button, tapping is always much better. Make sure your ceiling interaction is on, that way you can climb on roofs, that kind of thing. So everything here for me is default. The only thing you do have to turn on is ceiling interaction for the gameplay section. As for assist, this is crosshair color, this is your grappling hook. So mine is light blue every time I grapple. As for crosshair, that is when you aim at your enemy. I have mine set to light pink, so you can mess around with those colors if you want. And then I do recommend having connection status on so you can see if you're lagging or whatever. And that's pretty much it. These are your pickup items. You can choose like how often you want to pick up something. So that way, like if you're spamming, let's say pick up, you don't want your whole inventory to be one item. So you can kind of limit to how much you pick up. And as a social, this is kind of like self-explanatory. If you want to keep your account private and people can't message you or whatever, then this is where you adjust that. You can even hide your in-game stats in here if you do choose to do so. But yeah, that is my graphic settings. I hope I did help you guys out a little bit for better FPS. FPS is super crucial, especially if you're playing an attorney. There's going to be a lot of players around you, a lot of ultimates, so that's why FPS is going to be huge. Even if, let's say, FPS doesn't affect you much early game, when things like get super spicy and a lot of fights start happening, you're going to see your FPS get affected a little bit. So that's when having super low graphic settings will help out a ton. But anyway, thanks so much for watching, and peace.